This is Dan Bertran Griffey. Isaiah chapter 47. Babylon's daughter sits in the dust of war, no longer a lady among the nations of the earth. Her science turned against her as her woke army fails her on the battlefield. Governed by sorcerers, their laws bring desolation to her cities and heavenly judgment upon her people. Verse 1. Come down. So Isaiah the prophet is, of course, speaking in an event that's going to take place in time and space and happened in ancient times. But what we are dealing with is the time period of the Tribulation Period. So there's twofold fulfillment of prophecy, and that is the second fulfillment. So the first fulfillment happens in time and space. The second fulfillment happens in the 7-year tribulation period. So when he says, come down, the Lord is speaking to a nation who is exalted, who is high up. And then in the next verse it says, because of its iniquity, this nation, heaven commands America, which is the actual daughter of Babylon, that Isaiah is speaking of in the second fulfillment of it, the United States, to descend from its high place over the other nations. No more to be a leader that they look up to. So this is talking about the descent of America, descending of America from its exalted place that it's had since World War II. And it goes into why it descends and why it comes down, has to come down from that exalted position. It says, and set in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. So it's talking about the virgin daughter of Babylon. All right, we're just talking about that it was pure at one time, and then she became contaminated. She became vile. This is what we're seeing that's happening in America today. And it says America is not just lowered a little bit, but she's lowered to the dust, because it says, come sit down in the ground. It says, sit on the ground, there is no throne. So there is no throne. It says America has no one to defend her. She has no father, brother, husband, or champion to defend her against this heavenly decree. So there's no one that's going to defend her. There's no cavalry coming to save America, because this is judgment that falls upon America from heaven. Back in verse 1. It says, O daughter of the Chaldeans. So America's secret identity is revealed. Her DNA, heaven traces back to ancient Babylon. So Babylon was the capital of the Chaldeans. So when you're dealing with this in the second fulfillment in the tribulation period, in which we're just a few years off from going into the tribulation period at this time of this recording. So when you're dealing with this, that means that the Babylon, which would be New York, which is modern day, and most people know it. There's even bumper stickers and stuff that you see all across America that, come from New York and Babylon and stuff like this, and everybody knows it. The musicians know it, the Beatles knew it. All these people know it. They know where Babylon is. There's no problem with identifying where the modern day Babylon or the daughter of Babylon is. But also this Babylon was the capital of the Chaldeans, so you have Babylon, which is New York, and then you have the rest of the Chaldeans. So it was all conquered and stuff when it finally came by the Persians that conquered it. And so you got the rest of the Chaldeans, which would be the rest of America, the rest of the continent of America, the United States, which is specifically talking about the United States, not North or South or Central America. It says, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. It does not say she was tender and delicate. It says she was called tender and delicate. So at one point in time, America presented herself to the world as being tender and delicate and, in a sense, a virgin. Okay, so she was pure, or she presented herself as being pure. Now, whether she was pure, that depends on how you look at purity. But at one time, her faith was in God, okay? And this was not, we're not talking about the founding fathers and the creation of the corporate America or what we call the United States or the 13 colonies. We're talking about actually back all the way into the original start of what began here, other than, of course, the American Indians, which the judgment, heaven brought the white men to judge the Americans at that time, and then, of course, now we're fixing to be judged same way that the white man was judged for the same reasons. And so this is a judgment that's falling upon America. But the purity of America, the time that she was innocent, was not with the founding fathers, because that was not innocence. The founding fathers were not innocent. What they created became basically turned into a plantation for the what was called the global elite, or the plantation owners, the slave owners. I'm not talking about slavery back in time. I'm talking about slavery that we're still in even today. We never got out of slavery. It wasn't that the black people in America were released from slavery. They just, the Civil War did not release the black people from slavery. It just equalized slavery among everybody. So the whites are slaves, although it didn't look like it. All nationalities in America, which was made up of multiple nationalities, which is what came to, form Babylon. The nationalities all became more slaves. So when we're going back into a pure state, it's talking not about the founding fathers. It's talking about the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims came to seek God. The Pilgrims came in innocence. The Pilgrim came and dealt kindly and well with the Indians. And this is the state that we're talking about. And it says, "Thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate." When you look back into the heritage of America, which, of course, is believed to be from, of course, the English Empire. So you go from the English Empire and you trace the DNA, national DNA, say national or empire DNA, for the DNA of the empires through history. You go back from the English Empire, then you got American Empire. You trace its lineage back to the English Empire, which you trace its lineage back to the Roman Empire, which is traced back to the Greek Empire, which is traced back to the Egyptian Empire, which is traced back to the original Babylonian Empire, which is traced back to the Babel Empire, which is traced back to the pre-flood reptilian empire, which is traced back to the snake in Eden, which is traced back to the DNA of Satan. Okay? And that's where these empires came from. This is the lineage of these empires that came from. America, descends from the same lineage that has always oppressed mankind. The lineage of the pharaohs has always handled the slaves. The pharaohs throughout these empires, the oppressors throughout these empires, has always handled the enslaved. So, without God, there is no freedom. Okay? So if you're not living for God, then you are enslaved. It doesn't matter what color you are. You're still enslaved. You're enslaved in sin. You're enslaved with the society you're in. You're enslaved with taxes. You're enslaved with everything. That is like you're enslaved with iniquity. You're enslaved with you're enslaved by the music industry that you listen to. You're enslaved by the televisions that you watch. You're enslaved by the internet. These are all oppression devices that trace their lineages all through these empires who have always enslaved their people. Okay, even though they were considered free, even though the English Empire was considered free, the British Empire, it was not free. It was oppressing its people throughout its entire history. And that's exactly a correct study of the lineage and the history and the descending of the empires, the DNA of the empires, So we're dealing with in Isaiah, the second chapter. We're going into the second chapter now. Take the millstones and grind meal. Uncover thy locks. Make bare the leg. Uncover the thigh. Pass over the rivers. So, in other words, there comes a time in America's life, comes a time which is happening now, that the corruption becomes so heavy that is in America that it starts imploding upon itself. This evil and this corruption and all this hidden secret stuff and secret societies and who's really doing things and running things and all this stuff, their sins actually are revealed and comes out. And what's interesting is that in this stage, the 47th chapter of Isaiah deals with the destruction of America, the United States. And in this stage, it talks of, in this second verse, it talks of millstones, and grinding mill and stuff, and all this uncovering of this bearing of the leg and uncover the thigh and pass over the rivers and stuff. And thy nakedness, in verse 3, thy nakedness is uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. So what happens is, this is just an example, is like Jeffrey Epstein, his famous list of famous, powerful people that are running America and dealing with millstones. This is, in other words, the millstones are going to be revealed, and they're going to grind mill. The millstones are going to be revealed. And when these millstones are revealed, they're going to grind the people that all this is secret for, that have benefited by being secret and their actions secretly. It's going to grind them to powder. So you go back to dealing with millstones, you go back to Matthew 18, verse 6, and it says, this is translated from God's Word translation, it says, their little ones believe in me. It would be best for the person who causes one of them to lose faith to be drowned in the sea with a large stone hung around his neck. And King James says millstone hung around his neck. So it says America is a key perpetrator of world child kidnapping, torture, molesting, and sacrificing. America evangelizes and is a key instigator that feeds world child abuse. And this is what is being uncovered. This is what the scripture talks about. It's going to be uncovered about the daughter. And verse 1, it talks about the daughter of Babylon. So it's speaking of America in the last days, actually right before the tribulation period, going into the tribulation period. And it says, heaven tells America, go ahead, pass your child consent laws and force nations to enforce such laws upon their people. But I'm coming for you. Judgment's coming for you, America, and judgment's falling. So it's God that's going to deal with America. It's God that's going to it's not just bring America down, but actually destroy it amongst the nations. Babylon falls. And Revelation, where it says Babylon is fallen. Well, that's the start of the tribulation period. And that's the first thing that's going to happen, is America is going to be destroyed. And that starts the tribulation, 7-year tribulation period. In verse 3, it says, I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. So the creator of the universe, this is coming from the creator of the universe, is saying, is not going to confront the United States of America of these laws she has passed as a man who is not affected by these laws. The Lord shall roll up his sleeves, his mighty sleeve, and bare his mighty arm. The same arm that dealt with ancient Egypt is now turned to deal with America and its iniquities and its abuses to other nations and its abuses to children And it says, he will deal with America as the father of these children that America is abusing, the children these laws are affecting in other countries. He's going straight to the source that's making these countries go this direction and pass these laws. These are what they call child consent laws, where they can have sex at any age and people can have sex with children and all this stuff. That's what they're headed for. That's what America's going to. And God is saying that when this, it's already happening in secret with these leaders of America, whether it be in movie industry, politics, politicians, that's all national, state, and local. It's, because they're dealing with secret societies and organizations that these men and women belong to. And it's kept them hidden from this all through their history. Well, now it's going to be revealed. Verse 4. And it says, as for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. So the Holy One of Israel, the Lord of hosts, is the Lord musters his saints, his Christians, his prayer warriors, to stand in the gap for those who cannot defend themselves against the evil of the land, the evil that America has become. The Lord says he's going to defend the children. He's going to defend the poor. He's going to defend them from being oppressed, because they've been so oppressed in America. He's going to defend even the homeless. He's going to defend the homeless, who would be part of the poor. And he is going to deal with the oppressors. And this is specifically speaking about America, because you go into the first few verses, you realize it's who is talking to, the daughter of Babylon. Verse 5, sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. So no more putting on a ladylike front. America descends into hell. The nations of the West follow suit. So because of the weight of the iniquity that they have been, these nations, the nations of the West have been run by, this iniquity has become so great and so heavy that they can't. And this happens in all the empires. It happens. They all go into this phase of iniquity. Actually, their leaders are always been into the phase of iniquity. They're pharaohs and stuff that oppress the people. They've always been in this iniquity, but it's all been hidden in secret behind curtains and doors. And so what happens is eventually the iniquity becomes so heavy laden that the doors are blown open. The wind of God blows the curtains off its hangers, and it shows the iniquity, and that's what brings down and collapses these empires. These empires, and that's the American empire. This is what's going to happen, or happening with the American empire right now. This is what's going on. It's just going to get worse. Verse 6, I was wroth with my people. I have polluted mine inheritance and given them into thy hand. So first off, you got to realize who is speaking. Is the Lord speaking to the devil? Or is the personification of America speaking to her master, the devil? The Lord is speaking to the personification of America. You get this from verse 7, okay? So when you're dealing with this in verse 6, you're going, thou didst show them no mercy. Upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. So the ancient means the old, the elderly. So America oppresses the elderly, and that comes with the financial destruction of America, which brings about the destruction of the retirement benefits The retirement benefits, it lessens them and destroys them to some way. But in the Social Security, it lessens it, but it doesn't destroy it, but it lessens it. So it's saying it's bringing this heavily laden yoke upon the elderly and the aged. And this is also an oppression against the American people coming from her leaders. That they designed this to collapse within a certain time period. It means it could not support because they kept stealing money out of it, so it could not support not just Social Security, but what happens is the people with their retirement, they were invested in the stock market, and the stock market crashes. It wipes out the retirements and stuff. Of course, the people that were in these things were not told that their retirement was being invested in a false front stock market. Verse 7, and thou saidest, I shall be a lady forever. So this is the delusion that America has of her former more glorious days. It says, America says, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it. Let's use the New Living Translation, which says it a little bit better. It's clearer to understand it. It says, you said, I will reign forever as queen of the world. You did not reflect on your actions or think about their consequences. That's what verse 7 is saying. It says, America's living in her glory days. It's like she has gotten older and she piles on more makeup on her face and still trying to wear the revealing, scantily clad clothes of her youth, and it just looks pathetic. It looks terrible. It looks really bad. It's like, she's not trying to be a lady that is looks and acts like her age. She is trying to deck herself so that she can bring back her lovers, her lovers of the industry and of investments and stuff like that, when these are all leaving and fleeing America and taking their money and putting it in other places, other sources like China and Russia and Africa and stuff like that, and they're all doing this. So this is America's heavily laden makeup upon her face. Is not fooling anybody. She's not the lady that she once presented herself was to the world, that she was presented for so long to the world. And the world was so impressed with her and her beauty and her industry and her way of living, and tried to emulate it, tried to copy it. All the nations did for many, many decades. So this all comes crashing down. In verse 6 and 7, it deals with that crash. Verse 8, therefore hear now this, thou art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly. So a nation of pleasure seekers, America becomes a nation of pleasure seekers in the world today. Who does that fit more than any other nation? It fits America, a nation of pleasure seekers. They're only looking for what feels good, what looks good, what seems to be good. And they passed their prime. They're no longer hiding their iniquity. It says that sayest in thy heart, I am and none else beside me. So this very statement that is made, shows you there's a very selfish nation, a very selfish, prideful nation that is no longer, as everything is collapsing, and the structures and the financial institutions and the banks and so forth are going under in America in this time period that judgment falls upon America, then you see that she goes into this delusional state. America goes into a delusional state that she says in her heart that I am and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. So this is the pride and the delusion that America gets to and becomes to, and it says that she's not gonna become a widow. She's gonna have a husband that provides for her basically she's becoming more and more a whore of the earth and prostitute herself out to whoever, prostitute her copyrights out, sold them, her leaders sold them to China decades ago. And nothing is sacred. Anything's for sale. You got money, you got stuff. People are all more about the people that are traders are more about getting rich and wealthy and less about protecting the nation, protecting the country. And all this has been this way for some time. Just been secretly hidden. It says she shall not be a widow. She shall have not loss of children. In other words, it's going to be children's going to look out after her, but that's not the case. She's going to lose her children. It says, yet this is exactly what happens to the United States of America. These things that she presents herself and wants to believe and wants to consider and think of herself as, all of that implodes upon her. And she's trying to grasp her former days, and she loses sight of what's happening to her. Verse 9. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day. What things come? Loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries. Now we're getting to what's really behind the curtain, what's really behind the door that keeps locked that American people have not seen. This is the real side of who's operating and who's been in control of America as a nation, as an empire that created the empire. So they come quickly. These invasion comes in one day. Of course, the invasion comes to America in one day. She's invaded in one day and destroyed. It says in one day Babylon falls. So the book of Revelation says, this is the sorceries, the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thy enchantments. So the abundance of witchcraft fills the cup of wrath America must drink that is given to it. So what's interesting is that, when did these enchantments go out? Well, they went out through her movies and through her music industry, and they went out through her political manipulations, and they went out through, through Hollywood, through New York, through her televisions. America created the movie industry. America created it. America created the televisions. All these inventions that she created, these things perpetrated and put forth into the world, these enchantments and this witchcraft and this sorcery. All of the tapes of all of her music is actually put upon occultic altars. The masters of these tapes, of the movies and of the music industry, are put upon these occultic altars in America, in New York, and also in Hollywood, Los Angeles. And they're put upon these things, and their blood is shed. Blood of children is shed to put magic and incantations into these things, so that when you're watching them, those incantations and this sorcery comes and affects you. And that's what's been happening. That's been happening with all this. And unbeknownst to you, of course, but that's usually how it falls into. The devil tells you you're getting one thing, but really you're getting something quite different. But you don't find that out until the time to pay the dues. So with America, it's time to pay the dues. That's exactly what the scripture is talking about. It's America's going to, and it's why the judgment falls upon America. Verse 10, for thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. So before the sudden end comes, there will be a great increase in wickedness within America. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound what's been going on the last few years? At the time of this recording, the last 2 to 3 years and stuff, it's just like the wickedness and evil is being thrown back. The Jeffrey Epstein stuff, the other things that is just being revealed. one right after the next, one right after the next, and they're just becoming unveiled every day. And heaven is showing America its sins and why the judgment is prepping America for destruction, judgment. But there will be a great revival, but we'll go into that also. But there will be a great revival for the people of God. The nation is destroyed. The judgment falls upon the nation, and the nation is no more. But the people survive. The people live. And a great revival breaks out because of the iniquity is so dark and so evil that is shown that the people that have any kind of inclination to do something about it, they rush into the churches. They throw out the people in the churches that have dumbed down the churches, and they fall on their knees to God, and they cry out. And this is what comes to a great revival in America, and also in the other nations, in the nations of the West. This is happening in all the West. It's collapsing at this time period. But America is the lead, kind of like the lead culprit, because it's the American empire that's collapsing. Verse 10, it says, "Thou hast said, none shall see me." So America thinks she's getting away with something. "But thou hast said, none seeth me." Oh, but they do. They do see the iniquity, because it becomes, heaven reveals it, unveils it. And it says, so in this country, the prophet is speaking about, there is a time and is past, thou hast said, which stands for, it says, thou hast said, it says, which stands for. So there is a time that gross immorality was hidden, secrets kept, like within a closet. None see me. So none see the iniquity that their leaders and their things that have created, their masters of their industry and stuff. They don't see the sorcery that's all behind it and stuff. This is all hidden throughout America's history. But then all of a sudden, it says, the wisdom and thy knowledge. It says, thou hast said, none seeth me, thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And so the wisdom and this wisdom and knowledge has brought her father what is passed off as knowledge and passed off as wisdom, which really isn't wisdom. It's passed off as wisdom, and it has perverted America. And because it really wasn't wisdom, it really wasn't knowledge, because they used it, they manipulated with what they called wisdom and what they called knowledge and what they were saying they were teaching in their universities or in their public school system. But really, the powers that be that should not be, let's say, the powers that should not be that were ruling America and running America, they were pulling the people away and turning them away from God with these teachings and these actions and her sciences and stuff like that. And that is why America becomes so corrupt toward the end of her days, and has become corrupt. This nation shall worship false wisdom and learn fake knowledge, which shall be indoctrinated into her people. It's indoctrinated in through all of these elements of sorcery they use, through the music industry, the radio, and the television, and the internet, and all of these things, and through the public school system, through the private schools, through the universities, the colleges, through the trade, even the trade schools and stuff like that. So everything it's saturated. It's saturated in all of this. And it says also in verse 10, it says, and thou hast said in thy heart, I am and none else beside me. I am and none else beside me. So America says eventually in her heart that, the nation shall worship false wisdom and learn fake knowledge, which shall be indoctrinated into its people. And it's through these systems I just mentioned that the indoctrination comes into the people and permeates the people. It penetrates the people, and it goes into their very core and stuff, and it leads them away from God. And because it leads them away from God and morality and ethics, America is led away from her ethics and her values that made her great. And she is deteriorating into this. She comes from an image of a lady, and she deteriorates all the way down to a whore, prostitute in the streets type like Dale. But she thinks she's still the lady. This is the deception that she has. She thinks she's still a lady, and she's prostituted her through all the nations. She's been prostituting herself out in her empire stage to all the nations and the treachery that goes with that. So she says, I am, and none else beside me. The description or identifier that goes by the words I am was who was speaking to Moses. That's I am was speaking to Moses from the burning bush. The people of this nation that the prophet Isaiah is talking about are taught that they are or can become just like God. So basically it's the Genesis thing. In Genesis 3:5 says, For God doth know that in the day that ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good from evil. You're going to, the devil's going, hey, man, you just do this. Go ahead and do this. This is snake talking, man. Snake talk. We got snake talk going on here. And it says, if you do this, if you bite into the apple, then all your problems are going to be solved. And that's exactly what was sold to America. Just you bite into this apple, basically, we turned the apple in America, we turned the apple into apple pie. That's where America, we got the whole concept of apple pie. And it was a manipulative way for us to be eating the apple. What do they call New York? The Big Apple. So America loves to eat apple pie. And so America's been chomping down on the apple pie. And her iniquity has just been growing and growing, and her descent into abominable things and sorcery and witchcraft and all the people that were the sports stars, the movie stars, the rock stars. They're all these stars, they're fallen stars. They're all fallen stars. They're not the stars that stayed up in the sky, the good angels, the righteous, the angels that stayed in heaven and obey God. They're the fallen stars that fall down the earth and wreak havoc and destruction upon it. So, this is just snake talk. It's what it is. It's snake talk. The snake didn't sell the apple to America. America ate into the apple pie. The snake just presented it in a different way. God help us. God help us. So verse 11 starts with therefore. So therefore means because of the list of evil that the nation does in verse 10. So that's what it's saying. Therefore, because of this evil that you've done, America, in verse 10, it comes, then it goes into, it says, therefore shall evil come upon thee. So why does America fall? Because sin has consequences. That's why. And America, in her last days, which we're in right now, is deep, deep into sin. Deep into sin. And all these things are being revealed to us now. And we're shocked because we didn't think that politicians were like this, and captains of industry, the corporate execs and the corporations were set up to destroy. They were created by evil to control and manipulate and enslave and oppress. So it says, shall evil come upon thee? It says, and mischief. The wrath comes at this nation in so many ways she cannot effectively defend against it. So heaven brings it, the attack coming from so many different ways and angles that she cannot defend against it. We got open borders. We've got all of these things. We've got this deception coming from our political system. We've got deception coming from our medical system. We got deception coming from our entertainment industry. And all of this deception is coming so many different ways that just overwhelms. They can't deal with it. They can't deal with it. And so that's why we got deception coming from our religious system that is telling us that, we're going to be raptured out before anything happens before the tribulation starts and all this stuff. So there's deception all over the place. The religious system doesn't teach righteousness, doesn't teach purity. It teaches tithing. It teaches It teaches a prosperity gospel, totally useless to the kingdom of God, It's become useless. It deformed it as they were teaching it. Also in verse 11, it says, shall fall, and mischief shall fall upon thee. Thou shalt not be able to put it off. So the Strong's says another word for ruin, the Merriam-Webster, harmful, injurious. So drought is upon her water tables, fire is upon America's dry lands, and earthquakes in strange places unknown to them. In other words, they didn't know there were faults. These earthquakes start happening in America all over, and places where she didn't even know that you could have earthquakes, And her geologists, her brilliant trained people are saying, well, we don't know how this is happening because we didn't know there was a fault there. Now there's this huge fault there. There's areas where these earthquakes are taking place. It's because the land of the continent is preparing to throw out the Americans the way it threw out the native Indians, the Native Americans. It's preparing to throw out the current modern-day Americans because the land is repulsed by the iniquity that is happening upon it and the bloodshed that has soaked into its soils. The bloodshed of the innocent, of the children, of the babies, through abortion, the bloodshed of the innocent, of the homeless, the bloodshed of the innocent, of the victims of the shootings, Chicago and places in our major cities, all these things that the law is not dealing with. The law is collapsing in these cities. And so all of this bloodshed is coming upon our soil and soaking into it. And the land is saying, the land is fixing to deal, it's going to deal. Heaven uses that personification of the land, just like the land threw out the Hebrews and the Jews out of the Holy Land. The Holy Land threw them out of there. And so the land is going to throw the inhabitants out of America and help her invaders when they come. The land of America shall help the invaders, and they show up because heaven is bringing them. So it says in verse 11 also of Isaiah chapter 47, it says, and desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. So suddenly this desolation, this destruction, people are going to be dropping dead. They're going to be dropping dead in the streets and stuff, because of the fear and because of the things that these treacherous people have done to us. This treacherous people have done to us. It's just, through the corporations, through our industry, through our medical field, and all this stuff that's coming down upon us is because all this stuff breaks at once. It all starts getting unveiled and happening all at one time. Okay, verse 12. It says, stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. So, whoever this nation is, there is a secret hidden in her beginning. Her history is not what she was told. So, and we're talking about America, of course. That's what we find out. We realize that it is. So it says, use your heaven's saying, okay, you got into sorcery, you chose sorcery, you chose enchantments to financially prosper you. Now use them. How's that working for you, America? How's that working for you? Your enchantments and your sorceries and these blood altars that are all through your land and stuff. How are they working for you now? It says, it tells you, it says that stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. So the youth, the very beginning of of course, the nation, we're talking about the founding fathers and stuff who were into this stuff too, the iniquity and the immorality of it. That was all hidden from us. We thought they were just all saints, and they weren't. And then it says also dealing with even back into even some of the pilgrims were where the one of the top families of all sorcery was hidden went on the voyage, came on the Mayflower. One of the families, the Collins families from the ancient world, which is one of the most ancient sorcery families that there was in all of Europe in the ancient world. Well, a member of them came and set up sorcery at that time, hidden from the Pilgrims. They didn't know about it. And those people settled in Salem, and we can go into that sometime, but they settled in Salem, and that's what was happening there. So this nation, so things had been hidden from her very beginning, which were not told to her people, because if the people knew about these things that were happening at the time they were happening from the beginning, they would have just gone in and slaughtered and destroyed there would have been a witch hunt, kind of like what happened in Salem, which what really created it. And then they had to rush in. The Masons had to rush in with damage control, and that's why they ended up just slaughtering, just grabbing older women that had properties and started slaughtering them and calling them witch and stuff. That's not, but from the real beginning of it, it actually began because there were witches that they were trying to get out and destroy because they'd done such wickedness. So, we're not going into that right now, but because that's going to step on toes that people, sacred cows that they have been worshiping for a long time here in America. In verse 12, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth, if so be thou shalt be able to profit. So are you going to be able to profit from the sorceries and these enchantments? Are you still going to be able to, America's like America, daughter of Babylon, says, are you still think you're going to be able to profit from these sorceries and these enchantments that you got out there that's working for you? It's in the music industry and the movie industry, and all this is in all the destruction going through the other nations of the world and just destroying them morally and ethically. You think this is going to be still working for you? You think you're going to be around to see the end result of all of that, which helps lead the people into the Antichrist system and stuff? And it says, this is all stuff that is the whole portion, the whole thing of this nation is going to be revealed. The wicked part, the part that you weren't taught in school, and the part that was forming to create such destruction in the world and a tyranny from the empire of America to the other nations and stuff. So be thou mayest, if it be so, shalt thou be able to profit. If so, be thou mayest prevail. If so, thou mayest prevail. So what it's saying is she is a nation of commerce. So, it's basically saying, how is all of the witchcraft and sorcery and stuff that you thought was going to be such a benefit to you, how's it working for you? How's it going for you? It's not going good. It's not going good at all. Okay, verse 13. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prosticators stand up and save thee from these things, that thou shalt come upon thee. It's saying that all of these things that you trusted in the counselors. These counselors were astrologers and stargazers and monthly prognosters, and stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. So it says, you think proof of her witchcraft. It says, you think, America, your witchcraft is going to protect you against what I'm bringing against you? This is God speaking to America. He said, you think it's going to protect you against what I'm bringing on you? It says, it will not stand. It's going to fold like a reed blown in the wind. It's going to fold. Verse 14. Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to set before. So this is how far America falls. And when the invaders come, they shall take all of her blessings the Lord has given her away forever. They shall carry off her wealth. They shall carry off her treasures. They shall carry off her corporate secrets. They shall plunder America as she was plundering nations that she got control of. She's going to be plundered, and they're going to carry everything away. And there's not even going to be a coal for her to be warmed by. She's going to be in really dire straits, really difficult times. And verse 15, thus shall they be unto thee, with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. So it shows you that this nation that Isaiah is speaking of is a merchant nation. Even from her youth, she was a merchant nation. They shall wander, every one to his quarter, none shall save thee. What Isaiah is saying here in the fulfillment of the second fulfillment of his prophecies that happened in the tribulation period and right before the tribulation period, which we're in the before time, right before the tribulation begins, the great tribulation of Revelation, the book of Revelation. So it says, what it's saying is there's no cavalry coming to save America. So America's states are going to break up, and they're going to dissolve into quarters or regions, and that is just the beginning of her destruction and judgment, and this all has come upon her head because of her trusting in her counselors that were astrologers and stargazers, and sorcery and magic and incantations that she put out into the world. Once America put out missionaries and sent them all over the world, and she was great, and that was the time period that she was becoming greater and greater and greater. But now she is putting out missionaries of darkness in her movie industry, in her music industry, in her corporations, and her military bases, 140 something all over the world and stuff like that. And all of this is promoting this iniquity that is coming like a flood from the source, from America. And the nations are darkened by it. And so heaven has to deal with it and has to dissolve has to judge America. And that judgment is coming swiftly. And it will be a disaster to America. And so that wraps up the Isaiah chapter 47, and which deals with the God's judgment and destroys America during World War III and also before. All right, this is Bertran Griffey. My prayers are with you. God bless.